There are a lot of games out there that are designed to make you feel good. They're not overly complex or difficult, they exist just to have a little fun or blow off some steam. But after a while, a lot of these games start to feel hollow, and more often than not, that's because the mechanics just aren't that deep. For me, that's what really keeps a game engaging, when the mechanics are layered, challenging, and force you to think critically about the decisions you make. This makes games more than just fun. It turns them into a little brain exercise that tests your reflexes, quick thinking, and problem-solving skills. And when you finally achieve your goal and complete the game, the feeling is that much more rewarding. That's part of why I've always admired id Software's reboot of Doom. On the surface, it looks like a pretty standard FPS, but once you dig in, you realize there's this intense, deliberate system underneath it all, a kind of resource loop where staying alive means staying aggressive. You're low on health, low on ammo, but the only way to get more is to throw yourself deeper into the chaos. It's a smart design and it matches the Doomslayer's tone perfectly. These games are designed to make you feel like a badass, but it also forces you to earn that feeling. Doom: The Dark Ages doesn't exactly follow that same formula. It still wants you to be aggressive, but that aggression is now more tied to lethality instead of survivability. And while the combat is still fun, I couldn't help but feel like something was missing. The depth, the tension, the push and pull that made its predecessors so engaging, it's just not there in the same way.
All the power of hell, cowering before one man.
Back in 1993, id Software released the first Doom game and it instantly became a classic. With its innovative game design introducing a 3D first-person shooter, it became one of the most influential games of all time. Now, over 30 years later, id Software has introduced its third entry in its reboot of Doom, bringing the beloved classic even further into the modern era. What made the Doom reboot, especially Doom Eternal, so unique was its surprisingly intricate resource system. Despite being the all-powerful Doomslayer, you were always low on health and ammo. Demons had large health pools, combat was absolute chaos, and everything drained your resources fast. The only way to survive was to kill quickly and efficiently. Killing demons was how you got health and ammo back, so the game forced you to stay aggressive. You couldn't play passively or hide behind cover. You had to push forward, constantly racing against the threat of death. It created this drain tank playstyle that was thrilling, intense, rewarding, and fit the Doomslayer aesthetic perfectly. If you're familiar with the Doom reboot series, the Dark Ages brings back a lot of familiar mechanics. You'll blast your way through hellish landscapes and crumbling cities, picking up a massive arsenal designed to maximize your destructive potential. But its standout new feature is the shield. It serves as both a defensive tool and an aggressive weapon. You can block or parry attacks, throw it to shred groups of enemies, embed it into a demon to briefly stun them, or even use it to charge across the battlefield. On paper, the shield sounds like it would add more complexity to combat, more options, more creativity, but the more I played, the more I ran into issues, especially around resource management. The core system still exists, you kill demons to recover health and ammo, but it just doesn't matter as much anymore. The shield doesn't consume any resources, it runs on short cooldowns, meaning you can always fall back on it. No matter what, you've always got a tool that can mow through enemies without any cost or consequence. And the parry system doesn't help either. At its core, it's pretty simple. Green attacks are parryable, red ones aren't. When you land a parry, it either stuns the attacker or reflects the projectile. The problem is, these attacks are so slow and so clearly telegraphed that it starts to feel more like a rhythm game than a dynamic combat system. Which, to be fair, isn't bad, it's fun in its own way, but it's nowhere near as intense or demanding as the resource loop in Eternal. What it all amounts to is a shift in strategy. Instead of being this fast, surgical, constantly aggressive engine of destruction, I often found myself kiting backwards, blocking and shooting until everything was dead. The Dark Ages also makes a few other changes that don't really help either. For one, the number of fodder demons has increased significantly. These weaker enemies exist primarily to refill your health and ammo. They often respawn until all other major threats are dealt with. But because there are so many of them, and because they pose no real danger, they start to feel less like enemies and more like breakable pots, just there to refill your health when you mess up. On top of that, the stylish execution animations from previous games are mostly gone. Instead of tearing enemies apart in brutal, satisfying ways, most executions now just involve smacking them with your shield or kicking them until they explode. I get that it's probably a change for fluidity's sake, but it still felt like a letdown. Lastly, let's talk about the weapon swapping. I know some people weren't fans of how tightly weapon counters were integrated into Doom Eternal, but I actually liked it. Each enemy had a weakness and each weapon filled a specific niche. It forced you to swap constantly and use your entire arsenal to stay ahead of the curve. In the Dark Ages, enemy weaknesses mostly boil down to whether they have armor or energy shields. Some weapons are better against one, some against the other. Beyond that, most other weaknesses are handled by parrying attacks. Technically, this gives players more freedom. You can stick with your favorite weapon for longer, but in practice, it made a lot of the guns feel redundant. I found myself using maybe 3 or 4 weapons consistently while the rest of my arsenal just sat there. To be clear, the Dark Ages is still a good time, the core Doom DNA is intact. The speed, the weighty combat, the over-the-top violence, it's all still here, it just doesn't challenge you in quite the same way. And if you're someone who loved the mechanical intensity of Eternal, this might feel like a step back. One thing that the Dark Ages does offer is a unique setting. Taking place prior to the events of the previous games, it provides more insight into the Makers and the Sentinels. And while the title might suggest something medieval, there's not a lot here that feels particularly Dark Ages. The cities and towns you travel through might look a bit less modern compared to the crumbling cities in Eternal, but the Sentinel tech far surpasses anything we have today. They shoot laser guns, fly around in spaceships, and at one point you're piloting a cybernetic dragon or a massive robotic Atlan. Even your weapons are just Doom guns in medieval cosplay. Some shoot spikes or bones instead of bullets, but they function exactly the same. And then of course you've still got rocket launchers and plasma rifles which don't even pretend to fit the setting. It's not a huge deal, but I do wish the game leaned a little harder into the theme. As it stands, it kinda just feels like the Dark Ages was a cool sounding title more than a true design philosophy. As for the story, well, it's bad. Now it's a Doom game, so I don't really expect a rich narrative, but even by Doom standards, this one feels especially dumbed down. The plot boils down to the bad guy wants to rule everything, and to do so, he needs a plot MacGuffin. You'll spend the campaign stopping him from doing bad things until eventually you fight him and it's over. There's hardly any dialogue outside of mission chatter and short cutscenes, and they're usually just quick updates on demon movements or vague explanations for why you're in a certain location. And honestly, vague might be generous. You often just appear somewhere at the start of a level with no real context and then just start killing demons. This was especially noticeable in the middle section of the game. The villain makes some progress, so the good guys pivot their strategy, and suddenly I'm in a forest looking for a forge to upgrade my weapons, and the moment I find it, the screen fades to black, then fades back in, and I'm in hell, storming the bad guy's palace. There was no setup, no transition, no idea what happened, then just as suddenly, I'm back in the mortal realm, doing something else. Like I said, it's Doom, and the story doesn't need to be great, but it feels like the Dark Ages didn't even try. It's just bare-bones structure to move you from level to level. So here's where I landed on Doom the Dark Ages. There's no denying that this is still a fun game. The combat is snappy, the visuals are striking, the music is as loud and chaotic as ever, and ripping through hordes of demons never really gets old. If you're just here to turn your brain off and unleash some carnage, it absolutely delivers. But if you were hoping for something with the mechanical depth and intensity of Doom Eternal, this one might leave you wanting more. The new systems are simpler, the resource loop is softer, and the overall challenge feels dialed back. It's really not a bad game, but it doesn't quite reach the high bar that its predecessor set. For me, it lands somewhere in the middle. It's a good time, but it's not great. Thank you everybody for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitch for live content. Until next time, cheers!